Hello, welcome back. Today on Picture Perfect Greek, we have another song, a beautiful old song. You know already probably that the songs I consider beautiful are the older ones. I'm not much of a fan of modern music. And this one is by Attic. Now, Attic is a composer. The name is a little strange. It's an artistic name. His real name is Cleon Triandafilo. And he was born in 1885, so, at the end of the 19th century. He died 1944, shortly before the end of the German occupation of Greece in the Second World War. And primarily in the 20s and 30s, he made songs that were very, very famous and that are still sung today. They're still listened to today, and almost everybody knows them. Very beautiful romantic songs about love with great music, great texts, great stories in them. And today we will see the first of them, and we will have a whole series because there are 4 or 5 songs I particularly like, and these are all very famous songs that you should also know if you're interested in Greek music and Greek song. Attic was born in Athens. He grew up in Egypt, where he learned music, and from 1907 to 1930 he lived in Paris. And in the 1930s he created in Greece a group of singers and musicians who were interpreting his songs, and he directed this group and made music with them. There are today many singers who sing his songs because they are so beautiful, and we will start with the first one, which is one of the best-known songs. Maramenos means something is withered, like a flower, like a plant. It is dried up, it is shriveled, it is withered. This is Maramena, from a lack of water, a lack of humidity. So something is dry and brown. A plant is dry and brown. And so we have Maramena da gioulia. Now, what gioulia are is very unclear to me. I'm not sure what the translation of it is. Everybody seems to know gioulia from this song, but if you look it up in Google or you try to look up Wikipedia for gioulia, you always get different information about what botanical species this is supposed to be. So it seems to be some kind of violet, but it's not clear at all what flower this is. And, I'm not a botanist, so I cannot tell what gioulia really is translated. It's a kind of flower that looks like a violet, roughly. And then we have the viόλες, and the viόλες are the violets. So it cannot be the same kind. It should be something slightly different. But that's it. I cannot do more for you in terms of explaining what the gioulia are. So it's a flower.
Χτες αργά με ψυχή φορτωμένη από θλίψη για σε πέρυσι.
Χθες αργά με ψυχή φορτωμένη. Χθες, yesterday, αργά, late yesterday, με ψυχή. Ψυχή is the soul, and this is where psychology comes from, right? Psychological, it all comes from psyche, which is the soul. With my soul, fortomeni. Fortomenos means loaded, burdened, the translation says, but it literally means loaded, so you can have a truck that is loaded with things, and the truck itself is actually called a fortigo. Fortio is the load, and so a fortigo is a load car, a car that carries loads, a truck, and now my soul is loaded in this way with something heavy. So you can say with a heavy soul, right? Yesterday late with a heavy soul, with a burdened soul. Αποθλίψη για σε πέρυσι. From sadness, θλίψη is the sadness, for you. Πέρυσι. Περισσεύω means to be left over, to be superfluous, to be more than necessary, more than required. And so my sadness is more than usual, is more that I can make use of. It is left over because it's so much of it. So this is what perisihi means my sadness is just too much. It's more than I can handle. So it's overwhelming. It's overflowing, you could say. It's left over.
Πήγα μόνη να δω τι απομένει απ' τον κήπο που πότιζες εσύ.
Πήγα μόνος να δω τι απομένει. I went alone to see what remains. Πήγα, πηγαίνω means to go, μόνος, alone. Να δω, to see. Δω is the irregular form of βλέπω, to see. Να δω τι απομένει. What is left over, από, and μένω. Μένω is to stay, από is to be left over in staying. So whatever is left, what remains. Another interesting thing here is that we have monos, although a woman is singing this.
Χθες αργά με ψυχή φορτωμένη από θλίψη για σε περισσή πήγα μόνος να δω τι απομένει.
And this is a very interesting phenomenon you have in early Greek songs of the 30s, 40s, where women are singing songs from a male perspective, pretending that they are men speaking.
Αλήθεια το βράδυ αυτό που είμαι τόσο μα τόσο μόνος.
I'm not entirely sure why this happens, but it is consistent across many songs, and we will hear it again and again in these songs. Women singing about love to other women, which obviously in the 30s was not a thing to do. Women using male forms to describe themselves, male grammatical forms. I suspect that this is because for some reason it seemed to look improper if women were publicly singing of their sentiments about love as women. This must have been some kind of, leftover Victorian sentiment, perhaps, where it wouldn't be proper for a woman to do this. But since women were singing, and there were lots of women singers back then, they just assumed a fictional persona like you do in the theater, a male persona from which perspective to sing the song, although obviously the voice is female. It's perhaps like when you have soldiers playing a theater play, at the front in old times in the Second World War, let's say, where women were not at the front, and then the play required female roles, then the soldiers would take over and play these female roles. Or I think also in ancient tragedy, in many traditional societies, it was improper to see women on stage or to see women, express themselves. And so they would use male characters to play the female roles. And so in this case, this is kind of an inversion of that. You have a real woman, but in a male role, and we are supposed to suspend our disbelief and assume that this now is a man singing, so as to not be morally outraged at this display of erotic emotions by a woman. So it's interesting, and if you keep observing it, you will find it in many other songs. So she sings, Πήγα μόνος. I went alone. Monos, of course, is the male form. It should be moni if there was a woman singing. Να δω τι απομένει. We talked about this already. Απ' τον κήπο που πότιζες εσύ. From the garden that you watered. And now the translation says that you used to water. And again, this is important, is the distinction between the continuous and the momentary past. We have two forms of the past, and I explained this in another video not long ago. If you go back, you will find it somewhere. Potizo is the present form. Potiza is the continuous past form, and potissa with sigma is the momentary past form. So if I say απ' τον κήπο που πότισες εσύ, then you came once to water my garden, perhaps, to help me out. But it's not something that you have been doing consistently over a long time. Well, if I say απ' τον κήπο που πότιζες εσύ, then now I'm talking about the garden that you used to water over a long time.
Την πορτούλα κι ίσως είχε κλείσει, μήπως ξένος κανείς τη διαβεί.
Την πορτούλα κι ίσως είχε κλείσει. Την πορτούλα, porta is the door. This is an Italian word actually, right? And the real Greek word, the ancient Greek word would be thera, but this is not used anymore. So tin porta, tin portula, and the ula is a female diminutive form. There are also sometimes girls' names that use this form. So there's Itza and Ula are some, you can say Elenica or Rinula, for example. Irinula would be a girl's name that has the Ula to signify that it's small, right? A small girl. So Portula is a small door. And you can do this with some words, but not with all words and not consistently. So be careful when you do this. Or kisos. The kisos is the ivy, is a plant that grows up, right? That grows on some structure, the creeper. And this door was closed. Είχε κλείσει had been closed by the ivy. The ivy had closed the little door. And the short grammatical note here, the είχε means had closed. If you wanted to say has closed, you would say έχει κλείσει. So this is the closer past, right? That is not yet finished, while the είχε κλείσει is the completed past, right? And so in this case, the ivy had closed the little door. Την πορτούλα ο κησός είχε κλείσει. Κλείνω, of course, means to close, and you can recognize the same word essentially, right? Close, κλείνω. Μήπως ξένος κανείς τη διαβεί. Now the translation says, so that no stranger might cross it. This is not entirely precise to the way it's expressed here, because mipos means perhaps, it may happen, it might happen. Mipos. Mipos means generally, perhaps. Mipos έχεις ένα στυλό. You can ask someone, do you perhaps have a pen? So that perhaps some stranger, xenos, which is where we have xenophobia, right? The fear of strangers. Perhaps some stranger might cross it. So the ivy had closed the door because perhaps some stranger might cross it. And the ivy wanted to prevent this, right? So the meaning is, of course, so that no stranger might cross it. But if you look for the no, there is no there, really. Kanis in this case means someone. And this is another strange thing in Greek, that kanis literally means no one, but it actually often is used to mean someone. Είναι κανείς εδώ? You can shout into an empty room, is anybody here? Είναι κανείς εδώ? Δεν ήταν κανείς, you would answer. There was nobody. So, κανείς can mean nobody, it can also mean somebody, right? And so, this here actually does not mean nobody, it means somebody. Perhaps some stranger would cross it. And so, therefore, it is closed by the ivy. So, you see, the nice thing about this song is how the natural world expresses the sorrow, right? And the natural world, these plants, they become agents in this story. They close the door, they protect the garden, they guard it from intrusions by strangers, because this garden is your garden and nobody else has permission to go in there. So it's a magical place, right? And even time itself helps because the next line,
Κι είχε ο χρόνος μ' αγκάθια στολίσει τη βρυσούλα που μένει πια βουβή.
και είχε ο χρόνος με αγκάθια στολίσει, and time, χρόνος, means literally time, means also year in modern Greek. Πόσον χρονών είσαι, how many years are you old? Or 2 χρόνια, ένας χρόνος, 2 χρόνια, 3 χρόνια, 1, 2, 3 years. Και είχε ο χρόνος, so the time had στολίσει. Στολίζω is to adorn, to wear jewelry, right? To wear some kind of adornment, some beauty thing, and to hang something beautiful somewhere in order to beautify that thing. So you can also say, perhaps before a birthday, when I have a party in my house, I στολίζω το σπίτι μου. I make my house beautiful. I decorate it, right? So perhaps decorating is another possibility here. Με αγκάθια. And αγκάθια are thorns. Την βρυσούλα που μένει πια βουβή. Η βρυσούλα is the water faucet where the water comes out in your garden, and you see it is small again, βρυσούλα, like we had before. Portula means the small thing, right? So in this case, the small water faucet that now many stays πια. And πια means now the state of it has changed. And from now on, it will be this, while in the past it was different. So the πια is a little complicated. It expresses this opposition between the past and now. Δεν έχω πια λεφτά. I don't have money anymore. The state has changed. I don't care anymore. Δεν με ενδιαφέρει πια. Right? So the πια is always a change in state. Την βρυσούλα που μένει πια βουβή. Βουβή means silent, not speaking, mute. This little water faucet remains now forever silent. But previously it was not, because previously, obviously, you were watering the garden.
Maramena τα γιούλια κι οι βιόλες, Maramena και τα γιασεμιά.
And now comes the main melody of the song and the title line. So, Maramena τα γιούλια και βιόλες, Maramena dried up, withered are the, here it says wallflowers in the translation, but I don't know what wallflowers are either. But the gioulia are more something like violets, and the wallflowers, I imagine some small, flowers sticking in the wall, right? But this is not the thing here. And the violets, anyway, gioulia are some kind of flower that this man was watering, or this woman was watering. Because we have to imagine that this is sung by a man. Maramena και τα γιασεμιά. Maramena, withered, και τα, also the jasmine. The jasmine is very common in Greece. It was a very common plant in old Athens. I still remember from the 70s and earlier, probably even more, when you went through the streets of Athens in the night, you always had the smell of jasmine emanating from these big bushes of jasmine that were everywhere around the fences. And this is less common today. There's not so much space anymore. There are many more high rises where there's less opportunity to put your jasmine out. But in the richer places in Athens in old times, where you had these beautiful villas with gardens, you used to have a lot of this jasmine, and it smelled beautifully and was a striking feature, when you went through the night.
Μαραμένες κι ελπίδες μου όλες, στις καρδιάς μου τη μαύρη ερημιά.
Maramenes και ελπίδες μου όλες, withered also are all my hopes, και οι ελπίδες. Ελπίδα is the hope. Όλες, all my hopes, οι ελπίδες μου όλες. Στις καρδιάς μου, in my hearts, μαύρη, black, ερημιά, desolation. We had this before, the desolation, in other songs. It's a very common word to use for this state of emotional desolation. Eremos is the desert, so it's a kind of emotional desert in which I am. Desolation is actually pretty good. Translation, mavri, erimia, black, desolation.
Στη γωνίτσα που άλλοτε ανθούσε, μέσα στα άνθη η δική μας χαρά.
Στη γωνίτσα που άλλοτε ανθούσε. Now here we have another small thing. So you see the garden is always described as being small, as being cozy. It's not a farm, right? It's a garden behind a house, part of a house. What the Greeks often would call avli. It's a open space, but avli normally it's paved in some way, while this is a kipos, it's a garden often surrounding an avli. It's a small place. There are a few trees, there are a few bushes, often ornamental, so that when you look out of the window of your living room, you see these beautiful flowers and bushes in front of the window, right? So sti gonitsa, gonia is the corner, and gonitsa is a small corner, right? Sti gonitsa που άλλοτε ανθούσε. Που where άλλοτε, in other times. Άλλοτε means other times, once, previously. And there's another song very famous, Πάμε σαν άλλοτε. Let's go like in old times.
Πάμε σαν άλλοτε, στο μακρινό δακρογιάλι.
So in this case, it means old times, right? In the corner where in old times anthus bloomed. Anthus is the flower, is an ancient Greek word for what today would be called luluthi. But anthus is still sometimes used for bloom, right? And as a verb, antho, anthizo, is the verb to bloom. And you cannot use luluthi for that. You cannot say luludho, right? So it's antho, always, anthizo. Τα λουλούδια, anthizon, so it can be combined. You know, the ancient Greeks would probably say the anthizon, but now we say τα λουλούδια, anthizon. So we use this still for the verb form, but not for the noun so much. Μέσα στα άνθη. Now, here is the anthos as a noun, but this is because the song is from the 1930s, right? So back then they used to say anthi. Today it's understood, but it is considered old-fashioned. Nobody would say anthi. Let's go and buy some anthi at the flower shop, right? People would look at you like you came with a time machine from ancient Greece. So this is not what you want to use today. But it's good to understand it because it appears in songs that there is the verb, right? So, μέσα στα άνθη, in the flowers, in between the flowers, η δική μας χαρά. Our, η δική μας χαρά. Happiness, our own joy. So he remembers now how they had joy, they had their own happiness in this corner that was blooming, the happiness in between all these flowers.
Κι ενώ ο κήπος τριγύρω μου πενθούσε, μέσα μου ένιωσα τέτοια συμφορά.
Ενώ ο κήπος τριγύρω μου πενθούσε. Ενώ ο κήπος, while the garden τριγύρω μου, around me, πενθούσε, was mourning. Penthus is the mourning, and this you use for humans also. When a person dies, you have a period of penthus, where traditionally in Greece the women are dressing in black, and so this is penthus. The garden is mourning you because you are not there anymore. Μέσα μου ένιωσα, inside me I felt. Ένιωσα comes from νιώθω, to feel something, to experience a feeling. Μέσα μου ένιωσα, in me I felt, τέτοια, such, συμφορά, disaster, συμφορά. Συμφορά is a disaster that hits you. It is a bad thing that happens to you. It's not so much like in English a natural disaster. It is more a disaster, a personal disaster, right? Something happens to you, you lose your money, you lose your job. This is συμφορά. But when there's an earthquake and, the whole city is destroyed, then this is not a συμφορά. This is then a καταστροφή. Καταστροφή, which is another interesting word, which is where catastrophic comes from in English. Kata means down, and strophe is the turn. So catastrophe is the downturn, literally. And so a catastrophic event is an event that initiates a downturn. But it has in Greek the same meaning of catastrophic, right, of destruction. But so the natural disaster is not a συμφορά. The συμφορά is a personal disaster, is a personal feeling of something going very wrong with your life. So in me, I felt such a personal disaster.
Πως το βράδυ μονάχη μιλούσα σαν να σ' είχα κοντά μου μαζί.
Ως το βράδυ μονάχος μιλούσα, until the evening. Os means until, eos, os. Το βράδυ, the evening, μονάχος, alone, μιλούσα, I was speaking. Μονάχος we talked about many times already, right? Means alone. And monos means also alone. Monachos is another form of monos. Μιλούσα, I was talking. Σαν να σ' είχα κοντά μου ξανά. Now this is where I hear something different from what the lyrics say. All the lyrics I found on the internet say ξανά. I don't think she's singing ξανά. Both singers I found who sing this song in old times, because Atik had a favorite singer in the first part of his career and another singer at the second part of his career. Danae is in the second part, right? But both seem to sing μαζί. Now μαζί is not such a good, grammatically good word to put here. This is why perhaps they use ξανά, but they're actually singing μαζί, I think, which is also supported because this is supposed to rhyme 2 lines later. Να ζει κανείς ή να μη ζει. So you cannot make ξανά rhyme with ζει, but you can make μαζί rhyme with ζει. So this is probably why they sing μαζί. I don't know why the lyrics are all wrong. Obviously, these sites with the lyrics one copies from the other. So when one makes a mistake, they all have the same mistake. Σαν να σ' είχα κοντά μου, μαζί. As if I had you with me together, close to me together. Σαν, as if, να σε είχα, I had you, κοντά μου, close to me, μαζί, together. And of course, ξανά is better in meaning, because if I have you close to me, then together is kind of a repetition, right? It's not something that you need to say there. But anyway, this is what it is. Μαζί is what they obviously sing.
Κι όταν νύχτωσε εκεί που γυρνούσα, είπα να ζει κανείς ή να μη ζει.
Και όταν νύχτωσε, and when it turned to night, when night fell, εκεί που γυρνούσα. There, εκεί means there, but if you use it with an event, then it means while the event happened. Εκεί που γυρνούσα. There where I was turning, when I was returning, as I was returning. So when it turned to night, as I was returning, γυρνούσα, γυρνώ means to return, to turn. Είπα, I said, να ζει κανείς ή να μην ζει. Should one live or not live? And this is obviously inspired by Shakespeare, to be or not to be.
Maramena τα γιούλια και οι βιόλες, Maramena και τα γιασέμια, μαραμένες και ελπίδες μου όλες, στις καρδιάς μου τη μάνα.
And then it repeats the lines from before. Maramena τα γιούλια και βιόλες, Maramena και τα γεσεμιά, Maramenes και οι ελπίδες μου όλες, all my hopes, στις καρδιάς μου τη μαύρη ερημιά, in my soul's black desolation. That's it. This was the song. You will find, as always, the full text of this explanation together with a list, a vocabulary list, on my Substack. I put the address here on the screen. You can subscribe there. You can support me if you like these lessons, and you can find all the written materials with glossary, with lists of, and this one is quite an extensive list. So if you want to have this all in writing, go there and get it. Thank you and see you next time. Bye-bye.